Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can join in the conversation. Also, if you have not already done so, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. In both cases, make sure you hit the notification button so that you can know exactly when we go live and you can participate in the live chat. Also, follow us on Instagram. Got cool things going on there as well. Finally, if you haven't already done so this week, make sure you visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. It's a cool place to find all sorts of Pro 2A swag. We have t-shirts, we have hoodies, we have coffee mugs, we have stickers. You name it, we've got it. And hey, the best part about it is every dollar that you spend goes right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. That's fpcgear.com. All right, so as you can see, back in the studio, the last couple of weeks we've been in Washington, D.C., meeting with folks on the Hill and in the White House, talking about how important it is to support the right to keep and bear arms, as there's this big push going on to institute gun control. In fact, this week the president is supposed to come out with his gun control package. Well, one of the problems is that a lot of these legislators who don't want to support gun control are being pressured because they're being told, well, we got to do something. We got to do something. And so people are offering up all sorts of alternatives, most of which don't really have to do with guns. The problem is that doesn't mean that those solutions are good solutions. It doesn't mean that they don't violate our civil rights. One of those that's being introduced or being proposed is called the TAPS Act. And, let's just say that we did a white paper on it, and we got a few problems with it. So with that, I wanted to have Matthew Larosiere on the show. He's our director of legal policy to talk about the TAPS Act, and what some of the problems with it are. So, Matthew, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Craig. Good to see you.
It's always good to see you, sir. So, do us a favor. Let folks know, or just give us some brief information about what exactly is the TAPS Act, and why should folks be concerned?
All right, so it's the Threat Assessment, Prevention, and Safety Act of 2019. And just if you're familiar with the government, then you can know that those words together alone raise some red flags to stick with the theme here. So what the TAPS Act is a proposal in response to highly televised mass murders. And the purpose is to, and this is a quote, to develop a national strategy to prevent targeted violence through behavioral threat assessment and management and for other purposes. All right. And so that alone is pretty vague and wild. And what this is going to set up a task force to work with local law enforcement, mental health professionals, and other companies, including like social media companies, to build big databases on private people and then do modeling to determine who basically may commit a crime in the future. It's a pre-crime law is what it is.
This is a Minority Report, for example, without the psychics.
Well, we don't know. They it says in other resources, so they could involve psychics if they want to.
Right.
We don't know. The law is intentionally vague with respect to that.
And this is an example of legislators abdicating their job and their responsibility to actually write law and constitute in law what something's supposed to be, because too many times this happens, and we see it happen with guns all the time. Legislators don't know what they're talking about largely, so they put stuff and they make it vague and they send it to the agencies that are going to be enforcing this, and they can change their interpretation at a whim, and they pretty much do whatever they want. And these folks are not accountable, not to you or I. And so, once again, we wind up with folks who basically are less interested in our rights than they are in trying to catch criminals.
Exactly. That's exactly true. What they're interested in is expanding the scope of their job. Well, you write this incredibly vague law, and then you tell them, all right, your job is to implement this. And of course, well, what does that mean? Okay, well, it's also your job to figure out what that means. So what's going to wind up happening there? It's obvious. And it's not just in the gun field, it's everything.
Right.
In property use, we've seen Endangered Species Act expand to such a ridiculous degree that you're prevented to use your property because a snail may one day come back to it. That, it's the same thing. It's the same thing here. And this is just, and don't let it fool you, right? They're saying that this is, this isn't gun control. This is something else. Don't be tricked. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes into thinking, oh, well, this, at least they're not taking my guns. This could totally be directed at us, at gun owners, right? Because things like buying 2 handguns in a single month, that could be part of the threat model.
Right.
You could then have to be managed.
Yeah. No, in California, under the red flag law, recently having purchased a firearm is considered a potential reason why you could be a danger to yourself or others because you went and bought a gun.
Yep.
And the hard part with some of this is that you've got these, you got folks who are normally supporters of the Second Amendment, but they also support law enforcement. So they're like they in their eyes they're balancing this liberty and security thing, and the problem is there's nothing to balance. It's really, you don't give up your liberty. We don't. Right. You don't get to take people's liberty in order to give them some perceived security. You just don't do that.
Well, you especially don't give up your right to privacy right now, because this is, remember, the Fourth Amendment said you can only be searched when the government has actual reason to think that you have committed a crime, not that you might in the future commit a crime, right? And you can get into the weeds on that too, but that's what this is. It's a pre-crime law, and it's really scary, right? Because in these social media companies that they're going to work with, come on, I don't have to tell you guys how they feel about people like us, right?
Well, exactly. The thing is you look at the models that they use to determine what is offensive or dangerous language, and it's literally things that you hear spoken in the gun community all the time. I remember at one point I noticed there was a dip in our viewership on Facebook, and I was wondering why. Well, I was copying the link and I was sending it to somebody for one of our shows, and I noticed that they had explicit was in the coding for our show. So what they were telling people is, yeah, these guys are dangerous. They're explicit. This is adult material. They were basically doing what they could to try and tamp down people who were viewing our program because they didn't want people having our language. Now, imagine if your freedom now is tied to those very same algorithms.
Your social credit score.
your social credit score.
That's what it seems like.
Yes.
Especially, and look, you might say, oh, you guys are overreacting. This is to give law enforcement the tools they need. Okay. And we've heard that. We've heard that as a response to our concern. Well, yeah. So when you look at it from the perspective of law enforcement, the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Second Amendment, those are pretty annoying things to deal with when you're trying to, prosecute and enforce, convict people of crimes. So the fact that it might be helpful to law enforcement to spy on all of us and build a massive database of what our political beliefs are and whatever else they think might be a signal in this pre-crime analysis, it doesn't matter. It doesn't sway me that to supporting this. It's unconstitutional and it's just bad. It's a bad idea.
Well, exactly. You can never give government unfettered. The more unfettered control you give them, the more it is ripe for abuse. And I think it's important that we stand in the way. And I've said this I don't know how many times. I know a lot of people out there don't care about the Second Amendment. Well, guess what? If you can treat the Second Amendment like a redheaded stepchild, eventually other civil rights will start to fall simply because people don't feel safe. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, we're talking about people's free speech rights, the things that you want to say. We're talking about your privacy rights. Those are all things that now become suspect because other people feel triggered or feel unsafe. And so now they want to take away those rights, not just your right to keep and bear arms, but other fundamental rights as well. And it's important that we stand against that. Now, you wrote a white paper on this. Tell folks where they can find it.
Check it out at FPC Policy and firearmspolicy.org. You go under the policy section. We've got all kinds of great stuff for you. It's all written in plain English. Trust me, no legalese. It's all exactly everything you need to have to know about these subjects is right there. Check it out. Really proud of our products there, and it gives you everything you need to know. And let's not pretend that our rights are separate, right? Let's not pretend that, oh, well, this isn't going at my Second Amendment rights, so it's okay. No, everything's related. It's like what Craig was getting into. The concept of our rights, it's a whole, right? That's why our slogan is all the rights all the time. You can't give one without giving everything. It's not possible.
You can't take away one without taking away everything. It's a beautiful tapestry, but guess what? It only, if you keep letting them pull at the threads, eventually it comes apart. So let's not let them pull at the threads. So here's what we need you to do. In the description of this video, you'll find a link to the Take Action page for TAPS. We want to make sure your voice is heard. Also, you'll find the link there. You'll also find a link to the white paper so that you can read up about it and you can share it with your friends. Let them know why this is such a dangerous piece of legislation. And by the way, you Matt, I wanted, you were there in DC with me. You get the idea that some of these guys, man, it's not that they necessarily want to violate your rights. It's they're getting a lot of pressure to do something.
Right.
And so
they think that's their job. They think their job is to do something, and they don't think of, they're short-sighted. It's, you don't think, I don't assume that they have bad intentions. I don't assume that they're, trying to hurt people. But the fact is, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And these people, they think their job is to make new laws. They don't think about what's going to happen 25 years down the line. And they don't think about the people who the laws are going to be enforced against, because they all believe that it's only going to be enforced against these other people, right? These criminals that they have in their mind. When in reality, you write a generally applicable law and it applies to everyone, including you. So it's just something that they don't, they're so far from the reality of enforcement when they, sitting there on the Hill, it's a real problem.
Exactly. So folks, it's important that you make sure that your voice is heard. Let your legislator know. And also, once again, let the White House know. But once again, through following the link in the description, go to the Take Action page and make sure that your voice is heard. Matthew, thank you so very much. Very much appreciate you coming back on the show. Look forward to seeing you at the Gun Rights Policy Conference next week or this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, likewise. I'll see you there.
All right, sir. You take care. All right, folks, well, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in, liking and sharing this program. Let your friends know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.